This is Josie Brown with Author Provocateur. I'm talking today with contemporary romance novelist Violet Howe, whose Tales Behind the Veil series follows the diary entries of a wedding planner who shakes off her own heartache by creating happily ever afters for brides who hope they've found their Prince Charming. Violet has also written a romantic suspense novel with a paranormal twist. She will be joining me in Milwaukee, Wisconsin this April for the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend. You write about romance in a very interesting way. You have a wedding planner heroine. And that's very exciting to me because I think weddings are the most romantic thing that anybody can attend. I presume you agree with that.
They can be. They can definitely be very romantic. They can be very heartwarming and very inspiring. And they can also have a different feel to them. Every couple is different, and their relationship dynamics are different. And, of course, their dynamics with family members that are involved are different. So sometimes some of that overrides the love and romance, happily ever after feel. Make it entertaining.
Right. I see that you have 3 books in the Wedding Planner series. 4 books. One just came out this summer.
Yes, there are 3 books from the viewpoint of the wedding planner, which is Tyler. And then the 4th book is another character who was prominently featured in the trilogy, and it's that character's story. And it's actually parallel stories because it tells the story of a disastrous first love that she had at age 19, and now she's encountering love again at age 49. She's a bit of an older heroine.
Good.
And it kind of tells a parallel story of what it was like to encounter love at that age when you went in just completely almost blind to any kind of red flags or anything you think about, versus 49 where she's almost at the other end of the spectrum and she's almost like not willing to give love a chance. So it's interesting to look at the different ages and how she approaches love.
Well, let me ask you about that. Were your stories inspired by real people or real events? How do you come up with your plots?
Well, for the Wedding Planner series, I was actually in the wedding event industry for about 15 years. And so I did, encounter a lot of different weddings and different couples and have a lot of experiences there. And as a writer, I always thought it was very interesting, the viewpoint that the wedding planner has, because you do, you're not just planning the event. You have kind of a window into the relationships between family members, between the wedding party, bridesmaids, friendships. You kind of get an ear and an eye into all of these complicated dynamics that come into play in pretty much anyone's relationships and anyone's families. And having that viewpoint, there were times when, as we mentioned before, it was very romantic and it was very inspiring and it almost like renewed your faith in love. And there were times when it made, the prospect of committing for life a downright scary thought. So I always wanted to write something from the wedding planner's point of view of kind of looking from the outside in at all these different ways that love is experienced, all these different ways that people commit, all these different tangles that people get themselves into over the act of this huge commitment.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to come up with a plot too, because it's so real. I mean, these people are living the most, memorable day of their lives, and you were a part of it, and you saw a lot of tears, a lot of fears, a lot of joy, a lot of memories being made.
Right.
Is there going to be a new wedding planner book in time for the Barbara Vay weekend?
I am going to kind of let the Wedding Planner series sit for a little while right now. I'm currently working on, I also have the Cedar Creek series, which is romantic suspense or romantic mystery. So I'm currently working on the 2nd book in that series. And I am also working and hope to have out before the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend another book that I'm participating in a Meet Cute promotion, which is going to be 12 different books from 12 different authors, and each of those books has a story where there's a meet cute, which is when the hero and heroine meet in some way that is unusual or romantic or funny or ironic. And so I do have some plans for that one to come out I'm hoping to get that one out before the Barbara Bay weekend as well. And those two have nothing to do with the Wedding Planner series. I'm putting the Wedding Planner series on hold for a little bit and exploring some other characters that are vying for attention in my mind.
Right. I'm the same way. I go to, I'm working on several series, not at the same time, but something will pique me about one series when I'm working on the other, and then I have to flip my brain around. And it's so much fun because it's such a great challenge for us as writers to say, okay, now we're going into this world and it's a little bit different. And that's why we do this, because we get to explore all these different worlds.
Yes, and I love to do research. So I love finding something that is maybe something that I'm curious about, or maybe something that I know nothing about, and doing a lot of research so that I can incorporate that into my stories. With Maggie, which was that spinoff character in the Wedding Planner series, I knew that the love interest in that book was going to be a rancher, and I know nothing about ranching. And so I went and spent some time on a ranch here in Florida. It's actually the largest cattle ranch by cattle production in the United States. And I was fascinated. I filled an entire notebook, and I was, asking questions voraciously the whole day, fascinated with. I had kind of a concept in my head, which was incorrect, of what the day in the life of a quote-unquote cowboy would be. And I was so wrong. And so it was fascinating to me to find out all these different things, that most of them have master's degrees in some sort of, grass management or environmental sciences or animal behavior sciences, and the different ways that they incorporate their education and the different ways that the ranch is used. So even though a lot of that didn't necessarily make me get into the novel as far as the day-to-day life on the ranch, it very much colored my character and colored kind of his background and the way I looked at him and the way I felt like he would make decisions and what he would do based on that being his day-to-day life.
Right,
So I
right.
enjoy that research aspect of it.
I know it kind of flips the whole story around, doesn't it, in your brain?
Yes. Yeah, sometimes it totally changes where you thought the character was going to go, and then you do research, and you're like, oh, well, actually, that was wrong. So it's very interesting when you learn more about your characters than you knew. So.
Oh, that's great. The Ghost in the Curve. I love the whole concept of that book, and I was thinking, how did she come up with this story? Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Sure. I lived in a very small town in Central Florida for many years. I've lived in the area for over 20 years. And in one of my previous homes, there was the curve that I would, have to go through that curve in order to go and come from home. And at night, it was just a really spooky curve. It's right on the edge of the lake. The road really hugs the water, like the water comes right up to the road's edge. And in fact, if there was ever really heavy rain or heavy, few days of storms, it would flood the road. And the trees that surrounded this, there was the tall cypress trees, and they have the Spanish moss hanging from them. And if you drove that road at night, like, it was just really spooky. And it started with me thinking that I would hate to end up having a flat tire or have something that broke me down in that stretch of the road, and that I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat. I don't like being outside in the dark and the unknown. And I was like, oh, I hope I never have a problem here. And that kind of was the seed of the idea of thinking about someone being stuck in that area and being frightened. And then that kind of grew into having a character who was maybe visiting that area and was forced to be, in that curve, forced to be there. So that kind of, at the very beginning of Ghost in the Curve, our character Sloan has come to the area for a weekend retreat. She wants it to be a remote retreat, but she's surprised, being from LA, she's surprised to find that she doesn't have any cell service at all in this little tiny remote Florida town. And so she's run out to the road to try to get in a clearing from the trees to get a cell service. And that's where she encounters the ghost. So it's not a scary story. It's definitely not a horror story. She actually is a very friendly ghost. She's a 16-year-old ghost. But it came in those, I guess you would say it was rooted in those fears of, like, what would it be like to be stranded on this road alone at night in the curve, and what might you encounter? And so that's where that came from.
Wow, that is that could definitely get your your freak going. I mean, first of all, you've got the Spanish moss, which I always think is very, very, scary. And in a
Yes,
mist and
agree.
in a curve, and if you're in a car, and if you happen across somebody who happens to be walking right on that curb just at that moment,
Right,
I mean,
right,
it just raises the hackles on the back of my neck. So,
right.
yeah. So I'm glad that
So that was the origin of that.
wow. And I presume that you're going to continue that series and we can look for more of that.
I am continuing that series. I very much enjoyed Sloane and Tristan are the two main characters in that series, and I really enjoy both of them. I love their banter and I love their relationship. They're both very strong and hard-headed characters, and I also loved the relationship between Sloane and Chelsea the Ghost. They definitely develop a friendship, and several readers have commented that it's almost like two sisters with the relationship that they have. And so I do have plans to continue the series. I'm working on the second one now. Sloane and Tristan will continue to be in those series, and there will be a mystery in each book of the series that the two of them are kind of working together to solve. So I definitely have more plans for them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I love the idea of a former actress turning sleuth.
Yes. Yes. So she's kind of exploring a different side of herself. She's always, pretended to be someone else and almost lived her life stepping into the role of a character, whether she was in front of the character, in front of the camera or not. And so now she's kind of exploring what she wants to be when she's not in front of the camera and who Sloane is. So it's
Perfect.
been interesting to explore that with her.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining me for today's interview, and I look forward to meeting
Thank
you
you.
at Barbara Vay's, and I know all the readers will as well.
Most definitely. I can't wait to meet everyone. I'm so excited about this. Like, I wish April would just hurry up and get here.
Want to hear more about the authors who will be attending the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend? Just go to my website, authorprovocateur.com, and click on to the other interviews. You'll also find them on the event's Facebook page. And beneath each interview, feel free to leave a comment about your favorite part of it. Doing so puts you in the running for a bundle of the author's books. Listeners can leave one comment per author to be entered for the drawing. This is Josie Brown of Author Provocateur, signing off.